state in India, there is no dearth of festivals, film festivals, which are women-centric, which are run by women and meant for reaching out to women and girls. There's no dearth. There are happenings around. There is also no dearth of festivals on LGBTQIA and related issues. But there is surely a dearth of festivals which will bring together all the genders and examine their intersectionality. So while we talk about gender-based violence and discrimination on women, we should be also talking about toxic masculinity. And again, we should be also talking about LGBTQIA. And so therefore, there is hardly any platform where often activists I find working in silos. So, there is a need where you can examine the interconnections of within gender, so intersectionality among gender, and then intersectionality of gender with religion, caste, class, politics, governance, and media. So, we are attempting, probably this is first of its kind in India, where a festival which is of 2 days from 10 to 6 p.m. and which travels across the length and breadth of the country. So it not just reaches to 2-tier and 3-tier cities. Again, that's a distinguishing point. We are reaching out to not the mega cities, but largely 2-tier, 3-tier cities and smaller towns and districts of Maharashtra. So, this idea came to me 3 years ago, and we started as a pilot in one college of Mumbai, and thereafter, we have had 3 editions so far, the latest one being in 2019-20. So I'm glad to welcome all of you for this dissemination meet, where I'm going to share some snapshots into the journey of this festival. So I have an interesting PowerPoint presentation, to take you to some of those salient aspects of our journey. Some of you might be perhaps wondering with the word SamaBhav, in Hindi and Marathi, there's a word linga bhav, which means gender. And so from there, we derived this word SamaBhav, that means equanimity. So as I was telling you, it's a unique, first of its kind festival that has traveled to different cities and districts. And today we are going to talk about the 3rd edition, which means 2 editions have already been done. And this 3rd edition traveled from November 19, to put exactly the date, from the 25th of November, which some of you in the audience might be knowing that 25th November till the 10th of December are 16 days of activism observed internationally to observe violence against women. So, we started with that note, and the first festival was held in Bangalore, and thereafter it traveled to other 6 cities and then 4 districts of Maharashtra. So totally 7 cities and 4 districts till March. We had plans to take to 5 newer cities after March, but unfortunately because of Corona, we had to cancel those 5 cities, which included Noida, Guwahati, then Imphal, Udaipur, and Patna. So, it's sad that we couldn't take, but nonetheless, we had covered 11 places from November till March. Let's go to the next slide. So we are grateful that, for a work which is an organization like ours working for 27 plus years, there's a dearth of supporters and supporters who can understand and respect our approach and the need to work with men and boys. So we are heartened that for the last 3 years, there have been several supporters. And in this slide, you can see the supporters of 2019-20 festival. So Movies That Matter, a foundation based in Amsterdam. Then Dawn Worldwide, which stands for Direct Action for Women now, based in the US. Consulate General of Sweden, Mumbai. Rohini Nilenkani Philanthropies, and the Whistling Woods International, which grooms students in filmmaking. So, these have been our great supporters for this edition. Next. And we are heartened that, an organization which works for men and boys. Often people ask, do women figure in your work? So I must tell you, right from inception, MAVA has been having a lot of supporters, consultants, advisors who are mostly women, and they are showing us the way. So always we are telling that the men's groups like ours are as a result of the women's movement. We consider ourselves as a byproduct of the women's movement, and therefore I'm very heartened that these four women which you see in this slide, they are women of substance. They are senior women professionals who have themselves made films, but most importantly, hundreds and thousands of youngsters they have shaped, they have groomed. And these are students scattered across the globe who have been trained under them. So I'm just literally telling hundreds and thousands. So we are really heartened to have these four enlightened women who have been part of our advisory board. They have been helping us in curating the films, selecting best films, and also, suggesting constructive ideas to take the festival ahead. So we are heartened that, and one of them is going to be a panelist. And so, we are very heartened that these four eminent women have been, advising us on the festival. And in fact, now we have plans to take the festival even outside India, which I will come to you shortly. Next. So let's come. So as I was telling you, 11 places we covered in this 2019-20 edition. And in that, these are the places where we reached out to. So in Western India, it was Bhavan's College in Mumbai, then Acropolis Group of Institutions in Indore. In the Northern India, we had Jindal School of Law and MG Kashi Vidyapit. In the east side, we had Centurion University in Bhubaneswar. Next. Then in South India, we had Christ University in Bangalore, or Bengaluru as the right word, Women in Cinema Collective in Kochi. And, since we are based in Mumbai and Maharashtra, we have to reach out to the people in my state. So 4 different districts of Maharashtra, we reached out. One is Nene College in Raigad, Mahatma Phule Mahavidyalaya in Pimpri near Pune, Priyadarshini Mahavidyalaya at Wardha, which is a girls' college. Then we had Rashtrasanta Tukadoji Maharaj Nagpur University in Nagpur. So these 11 were our festival collaborators. So you can see that we tried to involve and engage these institutions in organizing the festival, in reaching out to their constituents, their students and faculty, as well as organizing the space, infrastructure. So there is pooling in of non-financial support also, and partnership that is developed with association with these organizations. Next slide. So what was the uniqueness about this festival? As I said, that this is the first of its kind of festival that brings together all genders and their intersectionalities. So you can see that we showcased around 16 films, which were regional, national, as well as international. We had a wide range of films, one that covered on gender-based discrimination on women. The other was challenging misogyny and toxic masculinity. Third was on LGBTQIA issues, homophobia and transphobia. And the fourth was intersectionality of gender, religion, caste, class, governance, and media. So you can see a wide gamut of films that cover, and these were short films, documentaries, as well as feature. And I should say that among the select films, the spotlight, one of the film was on a film which was Canada, Bangladesh co-production called Untying the Knot. Then we were heartened to have 3 national award-winning films. These were the awards received by the government of India. They were Bulbul Can Sing. Then we had Iba Bakshi's Sunrise. And the third was Kharwas. So 3 national award-winning films. And interestingly, there were films by young filmmakers like Sri Cheta and Kunjila from Kolkata, then Mitali from Delhi, Tirtha from Bangalore, Dishant and Chirag from Mumbai. So, these were all young filmmakers, some of them studying in filmmaking schools like Whistling Woods and Satyajit Ray Film and Television Institute. And there were established senior filmmakers like Vibha Bakshi, Rima Das, and Zana, who made the film Untying the Knot. So we had a wide range of films. The idea was to give youngsters also an opportunity to explore into the different range of films. And what was the other speciality of this film festival which distinguishes it from others? That it is a non-ticketed film festival. Often the word film festival, whenever it is talked, people think of a 4-day, 5-day event where you pay 500 plus rupees. Let me tell you that I've been working almost 30 years in this sector. In India, still there is no culture of watching films. I'm talking about the average young person is not used to watching films with subtitles, regional films, English films with subtitles. And I must tell you that we are trying to inculcate the spirit in having youngsters watch these films. So we are trying to inculcate a culture, and I'm heartened to tell you that in some of the earlier festival editions, there have been colleges and universities who have started a film club. And it's heartening that among these 11 venues, there was an institution in Spain which inaugurated a film society in their midst, and they are having now periodic film screenings after our festival. So, we are trying to inculcate that. The second interesting thing is that there is a great churning of minds. So you can see that boys are present in large numbers in these festivals. They are listening to girls, and similarly, girls are listening to differently thinking boys. So there is a dearth of platforms in our country where you can examine the underlying issues related to gender and sexuality. And through this festival, we are trying to give what I could say as that safe, non-threatening space, for youngsters to interrogate into masculinity, interrogate into the breaking of binaries, which is so necessary. And, so I find this is the uniqueness that the festival is attempting to ventilate differences as well as celebrate the diversity in gender. And I think that makes the festival unique. So you find interestingly that we'll see some visuals. Next slide, Altamash. So I'm not taking much time, but I'm showing some interesting snapshots, which I'm sure you would be very heartened to see. Next. So these are the visuals of the interface, which happens post screenings. And you can see that there are students from abroad, from Australia, who were part of this one or two venues. And there are students, girl students, boys who are listening and articulating. Next, they are narrating anecdotes from their lives on the issues which they have seen on screen. So that is the uniqueness, that you are making them open up and talk about interrelated issues at ease, without any kind of hesitation or fear. Next. So you can see these are some of the discussants and panelists who were trying to engage with the audience post screenings. Next. And this is a very interesting slide. So people must be wondering, what was the composition? So we had in the 2019 edition, 1920 edition, a total of 2,533 participants. And this is the roughly breakup of different cities and the districts. And we have shown through a chart how, compared to the earlier two editions, we have performed better, and in terms of number. And also when you combine the three years participants total, you can see that they are above 6,000. So 6,000 plus one young men and women have been reached in 23 cities so far through the 3 editions and 12 districts. So there were debates which happened, approximately 77 discussions were for this edition with 80 discussants and roughly 17 screenings per venue. So, the reach out, you can see this is offline face-to-face interactions. And next slide, we are coming to the online interactions. So we had Facebook reach out for this edition alone, 7,200 impressions on Facebook and 3,000 impressions on Instagram. So these are youth-friendly media, and you can see the collage, and this is the page where for every city there was a page wherever we traveled. So we tried to engage each city participants and would-be participants so that they come in large numbers and join our debates and discussions. Next. And we are very heartened that those people who took a note, whether it's the electronic media or the print media, they gave a prolific coverage and they understood the essence of our festival. So even the titles you can see of the newspaper coverage, that a film like Turu in Bhopal, it showed it rain hearts on the first day. Then a title in a newspaper in Kochi which tells we for them, and perplexing yet empowering. So I think these titles itself, and there were several newspapers. These are just a sample. These are in English, and the next slide is on Marathi. So even in Marathi literature, on web portals as well as newspapers, we got a very good coverage. So the discussions which happened during inauguration as well as post screening, all were covered by the media, so that people get a sense of this new happening in their city. Next. Often this was a festival first of its kind in their city, even in places like Indore. It was the first ever film festival held there. And now we come to a very interesting slide. These are some 2-3 reactions, feedback of people. So the first one is from an institution in Varanasi where a faculty has said that while watching through a film, I was able to see how religion is used for sending fake messages that demonize a minority community. While viewing Bachelor Girls, a film, I remembered how when I came newly to Varanasi city to work at my college, I was looking for accommodation and I was asked awkward questions like, what is your caste? Are you single or engaged? So the faculty didn't want to be named, but that's why, we thought that it's important that the quote tells us that several, if this is of a faculty, what about the girl students who are in a new city and looking for space? Then there is a quote of a boy from Acropolis Institute who says that the film Kai Kai Sexual, through that, I got to know how Pride Walk, talks about and gives visibility to the LGBT community, which is absent otherwise. The film, interesting, this quote is that the film gave good vibes about queer people, which means otherwise it's not. So we must understand this sentence, what does it mean? It said that the film gave good vibes about queer people, enabling us to think of building solidarity with them. And the next slide. Another interesting quote by a student from Christ University. She said that after watching the film, Please Mind the Gap, I was able to understand what are the dilemmas faced by a trans person. What are the daily stressors which a trans-identified person goes through daily? And interestingly, she says that why the need to build a third toilet for them when they may be comfortable in using a gents or a ladies toilet. So, this often, even in my case, when I was trying to know about transgenders and the issues which they face, often people might think that the simplistic solution would be to have a third toilet for the transgender. But the question is, if somebody is a trans man and is comfortable using a gents toilet, the other people may not know it, so the important thing is knowing that the comfort level, and that's why what is there in abroad a unisex toilet. In India, it may take years to come, but you can see some smaller examples elsewhere where it is being trickling, where people have started constructing a toilet for all genders. So, I am very heartened that this festival is growing from strength to strength. We are already, there are filmmakers who have given set of their films for the next edition. And I'm sure because of, the corona pandemic, you would all understand that one of the things which this festival is distinguishing from the rest is the interactive sessions, so the personalized conversations. And some of you might be knowing that there were festivals held recently which were online internationally. But again, because of our speciality to have face-to-face interactions, I'm sorry, we'll have to perhaps postpone for a while our idea of the next edition because of this prevailing situation. But as the situation gradually improves, we will work on, we already heartened to tell, as I said, some 14, 15 films have already come. And there are places like Bangladesh and Nepal who are wanting to have a film festival there. So we'll be surely working on that, and there will be a surprise as and when we are nearing and geared for the next edition. But I'll give the mic, the virtual mic, to Satchit, who is a part of our team member and who will be soon a part of our cultural and digital advocacy coordinator. So Satchit is an eminent writer, theater maker, and a filmmaker. So I'm very heartened to give the mic for the next round of things. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Harish, for giving me this opportunity and for taking us through a glimpse of the wonderful work that MAVA has been doing since the last 2 years. And my experiment today is going to be very, very specific, as Harish said, that we are not going to be having a face-to-face interaction. Ideally, we would have all been in an auditorium, watching a film together, having an adda and a discussion after the screening over a cup of chai. But we will try and simulate that because, the pandemic is something we have been living with for a few months and looks like it's going to be around for a while. So I would just request everyone who's with us in this Zoom conference to prepare ourselves for the short film that we are all going to see together. And like we close, all lights and enter a darkened space and engage with the world and then come out and then reflect on it. We will follow that kind of a format, but we'll simulate it while we are at our homes on our laptops or phones. And I think Altamash, who's on our tech support there, he will, on the chat, he is going to put a YouTube link about the film. And I am choosing to indulge myself and calling that YouTube link like a ticket to the balcony, So you can, it's your ticket to the balcony and where you can watch the film. It's a online premiere. We can all watch it together. And for those who might have a problem with clicking on that link and they might exit out of the Zoom conference, don't worry. We are also be doing a screen sharing. So you can watch the film while it's being shared on the screen here. And by any accident, if you are trying to click on the link and you get logged out, please don't panic. You can easily join back by the same Zoom link. And Altamash out there is helping us with all the tech support, so nothing to worry. And I invite everyone to switch off your cell phones and enjoy the 15 to 20 minute film now. With that, we have just officially finished the online premiere of the festival film. And can I request everyone in this room and everyone who's watching it on Facebook Live to do a clap for the amazing effort put in by Harish and his team. It's been the third year now. And before we move ahead with the most exciting adda and the discussion with an amazing panel that we have lined up today, I would like to invite someone very, very special. That is Mr. Björn Holmgren, who's from the Sweden Consulate General of Sweden. And we must be we must be very thankful and acknowledge the fact that it's been more than 2 years now that the Consulate General of Sweden has been associated with MAVA and our work. And we all know that Sweden has been one of the few egalitarian countries in the world which is committed to gender equality. And since the last 2 years, they have been supporting us, and we are always grateful for that. And I'd request Björn to please share a few words of his experience. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Satchit. And I hope the sound is good from my side. Brilliant. Greetings to all of you. Greetings to all the people participating, and also greetings to MAVA and HARISH. And thank you very much for organizing this digital version of the International Traveling Film Fest, 3rd edition. When I hear that MAVA has been around for 27 years, I feel that our 2-3 years that we've been working together with MAVA is a very short time. I still feel very humbled to be able to continue to work with MAVA, and I hope we continue to do that. Regarding myself, my name is Björn Holmgren. I work for the Consulate General of Sweden based out of Mumbai. Right now, sitting and looking out through my window, I can see the Mumbai rains thrashing the buildings, full monsoon. I know that there are people joining from all over India, Canada, maybe Europe as well. For myself, I've been in Mumbai 2 years, staying another 3rd year, so hoping to continue to work with MAVA over the next year. Let's see what kind of work we can do and able to do with the COVID. Let's hope that we're able to continue this good outreach. When it comes to the Consulate General of Sweden, so we work with questions like gender equality, we work with violence against women, we work with democracy questions. Together with organizations such as MAVA, because we find the work is worth supporting and also trying getting the outreach to a very important part of the population. We have been working for the film festival previous years, and we also present in other venues such as the Kalagoda Arts Festival taking place in Mumbai every year. On a regular basis, we join the Kashish Queer Film Festival every year. So we do work with these questions and different topics and with different organizations. I think that MAVA does something that's really important to highlight, bringing together boys and girls, young men and young women, is a very important part. Gender equality is not only a question for only women or only men, sorry. It's about bringing them together and also bringing together venues, opportunity for people to speak out and to engage. I've actually had the opportunity to watch this short film a couple of times, and I think each time I'm really impressed about the quality of the film. I'm really impressed about the people participating. I find the highlights really good. Film as a medium is very youth-friendly, and I think that MAVA manages to use it in a very effective way. It's also about creating the spaces, it's about creating the venues, allowing people, participants, to actually see something and to engage with it right away. I know that during the film festival, there has been local gender activists, participant at the venues, and they actually also respond to questions and engages with the audience. So that's a very powerful tool. Having watched this film a few times, so standing out, I must say, obviously the films are really, really good to look at, but I find even more impressive the participants, the courage they have to actually stand up in front of their friends, in front of their classmates and the students, and to talk about different and sometimes tricky questions. So that's, I think, the one of the highlights I would like to bring up. Harish also brought it up when he did the presentation, the opportunity to actually mix the films and the space for the discussions. It's possible to stay on and talk a very long time about the film. It's possible to stay on to talk a lot about the different topics covered. I think we have a very interesting panel discussion coming up. I also know that for you that have the time to stay on after the panel discussion, there's also something else coming up. There will be some spoken words poetry ending this session. So I invite all of you to stay on after the panel discussion as well. I wish the participants of the panel a very fruitful discussion. Thank you once more, Satchit, for letting me say a few words about our participation and also why we support MAVA and the Traveling Film Fest. So over to you. I'm handing over the virtual mic once again. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Björn, Consul at the Consulate General of Sweden in Mumbai. And once again, your support is always appreciated. Before we move ahead, I would also like everyone to have a round of applause and cheers for the two people who've presented this film for us, Parth Vyas and Kashish, who've been working day and night on capturing the essence of the festival. Wasting no time, I'd really want to go into what I call the adda in the conversation with the panelists. I just want to start with one particular quote that I read about in my film school days of when Satyajit Ray saw the bicycle thieves at a festival in Europe, and like that pretty much got him the inspiration to make his story and write Pothe Panchali. And he said one thing which was written in his diary is that my story could be cinema too. My story can be art too. And I think there is another side to it, you know, when we speak about festivals like these, that art can be my story too. A film that I see in a film festival, in a safe space, you know, where there is all this confusion about growing up at a certain age, your sexuality, your orientation, how you're being viewed in society. So before wasting any more time, I would just first of all do a quick round of introduction to all the amazing panelists we have today. I'll just request, right now I'm not doing full introduction, I'll just do a quick hi with everyone so that we know who all we are talking to. So first of all, if you remember Harish's presentation, he had a slide with 4 enlightened women. And out of them, we have one of the enlightened women in the panel today, Rashmi Lamba. Please say hi. And she's a versatile...
Hi, everyone. Hi.
Thank you, Rashmi. Is a versatile media professional with over 40 years of experience in film production, direction, film festivals, social and corporate communications. And apart from Lakshmi, we are being also joined by Tara Kaushal. Tara Kaushal, please say hi. Yes, she's a writer and media consultant based out of Mumbai and Gold Coast, Australia. And her recently published book, Why Men Rape. I'm just going to say the title and come back to it in her discussion. But I'm sure a lot of people in the conference are already like intrigued by what's going to come in the conversation now. And I'd also like to welcome Asiya Shervani. Asiya, please. Hi. And she has a profile which I would say is even more difficult to pin down than me. I usually use my profile as something which is untranslatable, but let's just say she works in the realm of organizational effectiveness, workplace ethics, diversity, inclusion, and change management policies. So apart from the 3 women here, we have Devashish Makhija. Dev, please say hi.
Hi.
And Devashish Makhija is a name that needs no introduction for people who follow independent cinema. And of course, his recent film, Bhosle and Ajji before that, and Unga, and a spate of short films, he'll also be discussing with us in the panel. And another very, very interesting element to our panel today, who I'm calling spoken word disruptionist and poet Sudeep Pagedar. Will you say hi, Sudeep?
Hey, Satchit, I'm here.
Yes, hi. And so he has 3 poems, which I'm going to space them out through the conference. And one of the ideas that when we were having a dry run of this is, everyone said that let's not make it into a boring conference about gender where people are going on and on repeating the same points. So since we have people from such different exciting realms and experiences, we are going to play it by the ball and really look at it and simulate this as an adda. The film is over. We've all stepped out, some people would be sipping a cup of tea, some would be going for a smoke break. And to start off the conversation, I would first want three people in the panel who have actually been at the festival on ground. And they are Rashmi Lamba herself, Tara, Kaushal, and Asiya. And I would really, like, we were all very moved when we saw some of the reactions and responses of people on ground. But since you've been there, if you could tell us how these festivals and these safe spaces for conversation and dialogue, and what was your experience? I think, Rashmi, you can start, and followed by Tara and Asiya, of course.
Okay. Yes, I'm a great fan of what MAVA does, and especially this festival, I think, as Harish said, is very unique. And you actually nailed it by saying that face-to-face interaction. So even the curation of films is such an exciting process, because the very fact that films like this are being made is so bold, because now the youngsters and some of the seniors are making these films, which are, as you called, we've got this favorite word now. I think that's the code word we have called disruptors, right? So I think that was a very important fact that came out when we were meeting the youngsters and the face-to-face interactions, that despite having social media, despite having the OTT platforms, the question is, do people look for these films? You see, that was the question that some of the youngsters asked. They said, Madam, how do we get to know that these films exist? So which is why this festival, again, is very important and unique, because in most festivals, I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of festivals and even run a couple of them. You go to the festival, right? As Harish said, you buy a ticket, you make the effort to go attend the films. But here the festival is going to these people, to the youngsters, and more importantly, to the educators, which to my mind is so important, because the faculty gets engaged and they engage with such a variety of discussants, which, people would not actually interact with. So to me, that's the highlight, that not only are we giving such an important platform to these films, which are so unique, so bold, so important, and the fact that they are, engaging in that dialogue, they initiate dialogue. And then later, I think we'll talk about the safe space that it creates, which is, again, to me, very important, because I've had these fabulous experiences of what Harish said, girls talking to boys and boys talking to girls in a very safe place. And I really, really value this particular experience very much.
Tara, you want to
Yes.
tell us a little also about your experience at the festival, and a little about 2 years of the research that went into your book, and how much of the festival has had a role in contributing to that, or vice versa?
It was actually 7 years of research, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So I went with SamaBhav. I went to Bangalore last year, and then I was here in Bombay as well. And I thought that it was phenomenal. Not only these films, right, which were, even for me, someone who's not very engaged in films, I found them, eye-opening and so different from the Bollywood and mainstream narrative that, you're so used to seeing. They were also very real. I remember this film called Bachelor Girls, which really, to me, was a very, very engaging film, because it talked about my journey about trying to find a house in Bombay as a single and divorced girl and all of those things, right? And I found that not only was it, there were women who were seeing themselves reflected in this, and transgender people and boys. And these were things these were subjects that they never got to speak about, even amongst themselves and even within the genders in their own spaces. And forget the genders that they were encountering every day, college friends and stuff. We're still talking about trying to break the intergenerational divide. So there was all of this phenomenal, it was literally like watching people's minds like expanding physically as you sat and watched this festival, right? They were blown. We saw someone cry. There were people coming up and having very evolved conversations. Now we're still talking about, in the gender space, or at least in the gender violence space that I know very well at the moment, but we're still talking about the length of her skirt, and we're still talking about what was she doing out at night and where was she going when we talk about gender violence. And here, just through a series of films, the conversation was just getting so evolved in front of my eyes, from the way a conversation would start to the way a conversation would end. From the film being the point of discussion to where it just continued. I thought it was a phenomenal experience to watch and be a part of. Talking about my book though, so I was undercover for 2 years. I went undercover with men who have raped across the country. The first time I engaged with SamaBhav was at the absolute end of that process. But of course, HARISH was somebody I met because I interviewed him for my book. He's obviously a pioneer in what he does. And I think that jitna acha kaho, utna kam hai about the work HARISH does in general. It's incredible and very important. So that's how I got involved with MAVA, because in 2017 and 18, I spent a lot of time with HARISH understanding what he knew. And I haven't been able to reflect even a little, a grain of it in my book, but I've tried.
Thanks a lot, Tara. Before I go to Asiya, I had one more little question to Rashmi, because I got prompted of it when Tara spoke about, the conversation evolving and, a more enlightened discussion happening right after the film has ended. At times, and rightfully, in a country like India, it also backfires. And there are ways in which, you have been negotiating that. So if you could, I believe there was a particular university in north of India where you had some kind of a protest against the content of the film. So if you could speak about, how you handled it and what were your learnings from that.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I think I fully agree with Tara that, each experience of watching them actually question, delve into themselves. Because again, just a quick background is that in 2016, I was heading a film festival on women empowerment and gender sensitivity for the FICCI Ladies Organization. And that's where we had MAVA come and perform and interact, because I think the conversation has to be, it's not just about women, it's about all of us. So I had the good fortune of going, I can name the city because it's Varanasi, which is, very deep rooted in its values. And it's, I would say, I'm not going to comment on whether it's fundamental or not, but anyway. So we screened, as Harish said, that one of the showpiece films was Untying the Knot, which is about marital violence, to an extent where there is this lady from Bangladesh whose husband actually gouges her eyes out because she wants to study and do her PhD. So it was, the audience was just completely mesmerized, and it was so intriguing what was going on. And then this lady comes to Canada and she's helped, and she's somebody who's now actually a lawyer. Even though she's blind, she's a lawyer and she's supported wholeheartedly. So we were talking about the question that was being discussed was the institution of marriage. That, what is this institution of marriage, the companionship in a marriage, what happens if you don't marry, why is this whole pressure to get married? And so we were talking about marriage, and there were some fabulous comments coming because the students were themselves saying, yes, we question our parents, how do we approach our parents? And in the meanwhile, we didn't know that a group of, again, our favorite word, disruptors had come in, and they just took off, madam, who are you? Hindi mein, aapko kya haq hai कि आप शादी को क्वेश्चन कर सकते हैं, आप शादी के बारे में ऐसे कैसे बात कर सकते हैं, and आप क्यों ऐसे कर रहे हैं? Now, it could have got a little, because then, the discussion got quite volatile among the students and a lot of people, and we were a bit taken aback. But the good thing, which is what I said in the beginning, was that it was the faculty that handled it so well, so sensitively. मतलब उनको कुछ नहीं कहा. they were, calmed down, and they were allowed to continue to be part of the discussion. It was not okay, they were told to leave the room or do anything like that, or what, even though it may have been a little politicized, whatever. But so again, the way things have been handled in such interactions, because obviously there was another time where we had the MAVA workshop at a film forum that I was doing in Lucknow. And again, Harish held a workshop and screened some of the films. And the discussions that took place between the boys and girls, there was so much energy and so much volatility there. But it was amazing that they were being able to do that, because, where do we have these discussions? There are no such spaces. There is no such place that you can have these discussions. So I think it was a fabulous experience, and I was so excited to be there to see this unfold, because it made the others also delve into and introspect, what is marriage, what is violence, what is gender violence, what, like you saw in the films that were shown, the clips, what is marital rape? How do you become a companion? How do you support? But there are so many questions. And if we can bring up these questions at this young age, and the faculty, because then the faculty goes on to discuss it, So yeah, it's just fabulous, fabulous. So it was really quite an experience. And to be questioned oneself again.
One more thing I wanted to tell about Rashmi is that she's also the India Council head of Gina Davis Institute for Gender in Media. And apart from being a content maker, to be also working in the works processes and the workspace management, where, the inclusion quotient tool is such an important tool, which is making news all over the world. And that is where we would also bring in Asiya Shervani, who, as I said, again, works in an intersection between human behavior, interpersonal ethics, and organizational culture, and has been actively involved on the ground with the festival. And please, if you could tell us about your experiences.
Yeah, so I think Rashmi and Tara have covered it so beautifully. And I have very similar feedback. So this whole exploration of personal ideas, thoughts, choices that, the participants go through is amazing. You get the feeling that they found their voice, so, and I, very often I just observe them, and I notice that they're listening to each other. They're actually listening when one person is commenting. They're building on each other. They take, so I love the word Tara used, which is evolve. Another thing I noticed was on day 2 of the festival, the quality of questions and engagement actually improves. It goes a few notches higher. So, that's a very good learning for us educators, that in a very short window of time, with just 2 or 3 days of good input and good discussions, the needle can actually move quite fast, and people's thinking can really develop from, point A to point B. So I just think it's fabulous, and I just love the positivity that they are in, where there is a intergenerational gap between parents and them. What I love about SamaBhav is that SamaBhav brings in hope. It shows them another way. This is how you can negotiate this. This is how you can discuss things with various people. They kind of become more hopeful during those 2 or 3 days. And they start thinking about how they can create a better world. Of course, we've covered, as Harish said, 6,000-7,000 people already. And what I love about Harish is that every year the MAVA festival actually improves. He brings in innovation. He's constantly thinking about how to bring in poetry, performing arts, visual arts. And I sincerely hope that all of us who are on a similar mission are able to join hands and help Harish take this festival to many more places, physically, digitally, and help all of us who've been working with SamaBhav to incorporate new elements and to really explore new ways of reaching many more people, because you know, it's already been said, the safe space that this creates, it's almost like a confessional. People are talking about things which I am 200% sure they've never talked ever in any other forum. They wouldn't even be able to talk about those things with, you know, a childhood friend or a best friend. So you can see that it's the first time for them. And I think it is immensely powerful.
Thanks a lot, Asiya. Now that, you know, earlier I was speaking about after having watched the film, we come out and we let the world with its normal light, so to speak, come into our discourse. Because while watching a film, it is such an intrinsic experience, one to one, the screen and you. And like now to bring in more of the world and, you know, expand the topic of our discussion, I'm particularly interested in the kind of the range of your work, which is working with media organizations around intersectional aspects like gender, caste, and other marginalizations. So a starting point of your work would be to study organizational climates and ecosystems. And how does that work? Do you see a lot of like toxic masculinity within that? Does it also show its hood in your kind of workspaces?
Oh God, so you're asking me what I see, right? So yeah, I see masculinity, I see misogyny, I see patriarchy, and I'm not only talking about people and their behavior, I'm talking about systems and structures. Systems and structures are also extremely patriarchal. Sexual harassment in the workplace is a product of a patriarchal system, right? So what I see is locker room culture, what I see is boys club, you know, bro culture, where they're goading, encouraging each other to objectify women. I see male brotherhood. I mean, I sometimes wish women would have that kind, maybe not that kind, but a better kind of solidarity. But I see, Tara is laughing.
She's thinking like we are doing much better anyway, right? Like, let's not keep our ambitions this low. Yeah.
I see loyalty to bros, and I see this, you know, honor for family or for organization, and anybody who tries to give you slight feedback is a troublemaker, is a person who's betraying you. I see this unhealthy power dynamics. There's this patriarch. I see this powerful, powerless kind of dynamic. I see hero worship. So there's this one guy who can, you know, who's the best star, best director, best, I don't know, whatever, news anchor. And everybody is subservient to this person. And this person is now kind of above the law because he's like a god. He's a maverick, you know. And then I see trust deficit environments. I see environments where you are intentionally keeping things ambiguous because you want to keep people on their toes. Ye kaam mujhe milega ki nahi milega. You know, so keep people in this state of heightened suspense. Somebody who works in the film industry, this young girl described it as, I feel I'm swimming in a pool of ambiguity, constantly waiting for that call to come. You can be clearer with people, but you choose not to be clear with people because you want to keep them in this, you know, desperate situation. Because when you keep people in a desperate situation, it is easier to use your predatory tactics on them. It is easier to demean them. It is easier to, you know, insult them. I see caste supremacy. I see, I mean, I'm so happy that this first historic lawsuit has happened in California, where this person has actually complained about two supervisors of the dominant caste demeaning and insulting him and creating a hostile work environment for him because he is from a, you know, oppressed caste. And this is exactly how sexual harassment of women happens. And this is exactly how marginalization of so many people happen. Casting couch is talked about as a rite of passage. Ye to hona hi hai. This has to happen. This is normal. We've normalized things to such an extent. And the worst thing that I see, I'm not even so shocked by all this. What I'm most shocked at is this culture of silence. You have enablers. You have people who are not speaking up, who are and people who can speak up. They're in positions where they absolutely can make a difference, but they choose to not speak up. Not only do they turn a blind eye, they actually facilitate this. They set up people for these sort of situations. They make it happen. And then if a woman complains, they get after her with everything that they have to gun her down, kill her down, and make sure that she's never able to speak. So yes, I mean, this is what I see. And I'm not only talking about media, so please don't think that this is true only for the media and entertainment sector. The last thing I want to do is bash a particular sector. These are things I see in varying degrees everywhere.
Thanks a lot, Asiya. And I think right now the time is right for Sudeep to disrupt. But before that, I might have a small announcement for everyone who's watching us either on Zoom or on the Facebook Live. If you have any pertinent questions, anything in general to the panel or to anyone specific in the panel, please do type your questions in the chat box. And Altamash, who's our tech support, will ensure that the questions reach the panelists through me. And while that announcement is done, I would now invite, since this conversation about the toxic masculinity is something that there's no getting away from, I'd invite Sudeep Pagedar to recite his first poem, which is called As a Man. And it's about toxic masculinity and patriarchy. Over to you, Sudeep.
Thank you so much, Satchit. I'd just like to mention that there are two versions of this poem. I believe Asiya, Tara, and a couple of others would be familiar with the whole conundrum. I will choose to go with the friendlier, the crowd-friendly version of it at this moment, because we have a lot of company with us, and I don't know who is functioning at what comfort level at this moment. So learning from Rashmi's experience at that festival, I will tread softly, and at least for my first poem. So, and more than a poem, Satchit, as you said, it's a conversation, right? And this is a conversation. This is a fact of my life. This is exactly what happened to me. It started off as most things do when I was born, rich. Not with a silver spoon, but with something just as privileging. My identity as a boy. As I grew up, this sense of identity grew too, just like my belief in the rituals, institutions, and practices of that holy status quo. Amen. Over time, I learned to reason and think, and enriched by the currency of normative gender, I bought into the binary of blue versus pink. In school, I recall, much to my shame, being called a misogynist once, and responding with a swear word, one that I swear that you all would have heard, a word with which now I'd never reply, terminology that I would never employ, but back then, I have only myself to blame. In college, this took a similar shape when I chuckle at banter from voyeurism to rape. You know, it's easy to say it's only a joke, but it's a great deal easier when the joker is a bloke. I'll also never forget conversations I've had, mostly all with lads, speaking of women as items in mal, some were butter chicken and some were plain dal. The lingo of consumption in our collective tongues, breathing out lechery, filling our lungs with airy sexism. Breathe in, breathe out. क्यों भाई कितनी बार देखा है लड़कियों को ताड़ के दिल भर के आंखें फाड़ के और क्या है problem if guys sleep around? Oh, but if girls should do it, we'll take the moral high ground. And if some irate feminist friend, angered to no end, should point out that gender thing ruining the fun, so as to not offend her any more than I'd done, I'd say, okay, I'm sorry, then what should I use? If not this, how else to abuse? Because any other words would sound really wrong, like alternative lyrics to a popular song. You know that one, the Song of the Ages, as written by the sages for everyone to read. Women to sing chorus, but men to take the lead. Here's the thing. I'm tired. I'm tired of hiding behind my expansive privilege. It reminds me throughout of the times I've maintained silence when I should have spoken out against patriarchy's inherent violence. And unless I speak truths to power, my own, unless the extent of the problem is known, I can never truly honor any commitment to fight the disbalance that stems from my sex-given right to get what I want and do as I please. No. It's time for attention. And I will no longer stand at ease. And that's why it's a work in progress, Satchit.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for letting me share.
Oh, this is wonderful. And just to give everyone a slightly more detailed introduction, Sudeep Pagedar is a Bangalore-based writer, poet, and creative solutions consultant, and he's received the National Award for Creative Writing from the President of India, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. And two of his poems have also been are being taught in the middle school level in the United States of America. We will come back to you again, Sudeep. We have two more poems, and the third one being the most work in progress, and that's
Yes,
really exciting for us. Now, now that we've gotten into these layers of what exactly is the men coming and saying, we are not going to stand at ease, very compelling lines. I'd like to bring Devashish and Rashmi to have a conversation because they are people who have also been content makers. With Rashmi's background in with her films like Begumpura and being producer for Jhalki and other documentaries. And as I said, Devashish has a very eclectic background himself. Apart from being a filmmaker and screenwriter, he's also a graphic artist, fiction writer of children's books, and a poet. And he's also been active with this independent cinema movement, which is happening in Bombay through his community, Abobo. How do I pronounce it?
Abobo.
Abobo. And Rashmi has also seen screenings there. And we are all missing it right now because of the pandemic. But in terms of making content, when you are working with a form that is so potent, and it is having implications at a popular level, at young men, at young boys, at all women, people from all genders watching a film, and how are we normalizing certain things? How are we opening a debate on certain things? So over to Devashish and Rashmi.
Rashmi first, please.
No, Devashish, you have so much more to say.
No, I'll follow up. Please lead the way.
Well, I think just to start, I think, of course, I'm a great fan again of what Devashish does at Abobo, because I think the way you do the discussions, again, like SamaBhav, I think the form that you have of the circle and the way the discussions are done and amazing reactions again. So that's been, again, a fabulous thing. All I would say is that, of course, as a content creator, and you mentioned, my involvement with what's called the Geena Davis Institute for Gender and Media, Geena Davis being the Hollywood actress, who says that when she was watching television with her daughter, her young daughter, she found that, and I'm just a fan, I do this voluntarily, she saw that a lot of the content that was being shown did not show were not inspiring enough for young girls to aspire to something. So she came up with this byline that is their mantra, which says, if she can see it, she can be it, And that was, I thought, such a fascinating start, which then over these, I think, past since 2011 or something, they've been around. I got to know of them in 2014, 15 when I was following them, and very fascinated by the research they do, because they are coming up with this thing when we are talking about content creation, is this whole thing about facts and figures, of course, to prove the gender inequities. But, for example, there's a thing they did with Plan International. It's called Rewrite Her Story. So when scripts are being written, if there is a woman on the team, if you're talking about a doctor or someone in a STEM role, will you automatically think of a man? Is that our bias? Or can you bring in an engineer to be a woman or a scientist to be a woman, Or again, when we talk about the tools that he talked about, Satchit, they've partnered with Google and they've come up with two tools. One is called Inclusion Quotient Tool, and the other is called Spell Check for Bias. these are using artificial intelligence where, like you do on Facebook, you can tag people. They're tagging faster than what the human eye or human mind can do. And the team is actually, strangely, a lot of them are Indians studying at the USC. And what they're trying to find out again is the gender, I would say, division, even in a crowd scene. How many women, how many men, how many LGBTQI, how many of color. That's the inclusion quotient too. Then what they said was, okay, why wait till the film is made? Why not apply this at script stage? So the spell check for bias again uses artificial intelligence to quickly scan scripts, and Universal Studios and Disney have taken this on to again see gender parity. So pretty much like, and also whether the portrayal is correct. And as Asiya mentioned, the cast over there, they have race, color, so all these things. And I really think in India too, we have such amazing films as we've seen at SamaBhav. And there is a lot of sensitivity coming, but in our mainstream cinema, which is what creates the most impact on everyone. How do we bring this in? And, as Asiya said, if we can all work together towards this, I think that's what would be wonderful. And, Devashish, you're such a strong voice with your films and you're doing such amazing work. So I'd love to hear your views on this.
So the challenges that I've faced all these years have partly to do with my gender, because I've been trying to be a voice for the marginalized and the woman, but the fact that I'm not just a man, but I'm a man without a very dramatic history. Like, I don't come from a very patriarchal family, but I come from such normal upbringings that it took me 21 years. By the time I finished college is when I realized that there was a certain, thought process and a certain understanding of power structure that is beaten into you just by dint of being part of a system, whether it's an education system or it's a normal day-to-day life that you're living within a certain very ordinary framework, but that ordinary framework is hugely patriarchal. So when I started trying to question that, I didn't know who my villains were. When you come from a very dramatic origin, you know what you don't want to become. So it becomes very easy to find that starting point, that access point to your journey. It took me 15 years to really cultivate a voice, because I was looking for what am I supposed to not become to become a voice that can represent the marginalized in my stories. So somewhere that push and pull is something that I still grapple with. Like, for example, I made a film called Ajji. And in Ajji, for those who haven't seen it, it's a little girl gets raped, not in the film, but the film begins with that. And a grandmother proceeds to do something about it. So in that film, the gentleman who raped her, I had a lot of trouble seeing him with gray shades. And for the longest time, the maximum critique I got was that you've created a monster. I said, because I don't know how to see this, because for me, that particular character represented a thought process that I took 15 years to sort of understand and therefore posit myself against. So when I did that, the only way I could see him, that thought process, was in those darker shades. I couldn't bring in, a humanism to that character. So that, I am a work in progress too. So somewhere the representation of these things in the mainstream is not something that I can comment on, because I try to locate myself on the margins of the mainstream, because the minute the mainstream sort of subsumes you, it becomes that much harder to find a way to, take a stance on representing the marginalized. So somewhere when I'm in that middle ground, I've been able to find a way to, bring representation perhaps, and also point out what I think is amiss in the way we are brought up in these coded structures of education, family, the workplace. If I came from, say, a Khap Panchayat family in Haryana, by the age of 16, I'd know what I stand against or for. But I didn't. I came from a very, very normal, everyday life. And for me, like, I use this as a touchstone. I studied my life looking backwards, and 18 years that it took me to arrive at my school life, my education, that took me to arrive at a certain thought process. It took me 18 years to break that. I think I found my voice around 35, 36. And I find that frightening. Does everyone have to wait till they're 36 to understand where they are placed in this machinery and then start talking about justice and representation? So I'm still grappling with these questions. I don't know where the answers lie.
I think if I may interrupt, I just want to say that it's much easier. So when these normalized, these systems that we live in and we exist in and we're indoctrinated into, it's much easier to be oblivious to them when you're on the right side of the power structure. So for a lot of women who are reclaiming our space or whatever, reclaiming us, our space in the sun, it's a lot, the realization of what you stand against comes a lot earlier. Because you're marginalized and you know it, and you know the limitations put on you as for being a woman, and you know the gender violence that you experience and how that has repercussions on your life and your lifestyle. You see your parents allow men and boys to live a different life than what you are allowed. And so I think a lot of women, and this is historic and this is documented, that in most countries, women are are less conservative than men, because power structures favor men, and so it's harder, and therefore it has less rewards for them to walk away from those power structures. But of course, that doesn't mean that men don't need to be elementally decent human beings who challenge the power structure. And we see so many of them represented on the panel today, and Harish and you guys, everybody. I see why it would have taken you time. I completely get it, but I think that women get politicized. Even if we're suppressed, we get politicized and aware of these power structures a lot sooner. Privilege is invisible to those who have it, as they say.
Yeah, to take what you're saying forward, around the time I was making Ajay, even the time I was writing it was actually the most excruciating, because once you have your roadmap on paper, the journey is not as excruciating as really formulating the map. So around that time, we spoke to a lot of, for lack of a better term, survivors to try and understand what, like I keep saying that I'll never know what it feels like to menstruate. So I'll never know what a woman feels, what that pain is, and what they have to deal with and carry through their lives. And therefore arrive at a place where maybe they're stronger, or maybe they're more fragile, whatever that is. But because I did not want to assume what a woman must be feeling, we spoke to over 100 women of different ages. And in that year, this was 2016 when we were writing the film, I think I sort of reached ahead with my trying to shed what I had been conditioned to be and was trying to come into my own. And I contracted prostate cancer because much later, while going through alternative therapy, I was told that I was hating on my masculinity because I didn't know how to find a middle ground. There was no balanced approach. I just went from one middle to one extreme. And the last 3 years have been me trying to work back towards some sort of balanced approach to this outlook.
So one of the films that we saw at SamaBhav, and Harish is particularly fond of that film because it's so sensitively made by a man about, what you're talking about, the experience of a woman who has a stillbirth, she loses her child after birth, and the pain she goes through, and the fact that, a woman, even after delivery, even if it's a stillbirth, you still do lactate. And then the whole thing, it's called Kharvas, and it's to do with the, colostrum of after a cow gives birth. But the film was done so sensitively that even for a man to, and it's a young filmmaker, the National Award-winning filmmaker who's done that. And it was just, I think that was a very poignant point that was made to the audience, that it's been made by a man who's actually empathized with what that postpartum depression, the way the girl's brother helps her get over it, the fact that she relates to cow giving birth and how she comes out of it. I mean, and as you're rightly saying, he went back to his grassroots because it's all based between a city and a village, you know. And again, I come back to that point about mainstream cinema and our independent cinema, about the mass audiences. You know, just a little quick digression before we come back to this. Satchit, give me permission. Is after I got married, I used to be, you know, this sort of working in advertising in Bombay, and then we went away for 6 years to Bihar in 1980, and for 3 years, no, I would say for the 6 years I was there, the one question that I was asked all the time and had to face, what happens if I get raped? That is the fear that a woman feels in India. Why? So that we would discuss later. It's too large a discussion, the whole power structure and, you know, whatever. But I'll leave it to Devashish and Satchit to carry on with everyone because it should make it too long. We'll have some more discussions later.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, no, I had a point to ask Asiya actually when Devashish spoke about, you know, being on the main, not being on the mainstream, being on the margin, and you know, making work along those lines. But you know, whatever be the nature of whether it's Tara's book, which took 7 years, or the kind of films Devashish makes, or all the kind of effort that Harish and individually all of us are doing, the mainstream at some level is something we have to negotiate with, because it's in whether we choose to not contribute in it, but it's there in our WhatsApp groups, it's there in our casual jokes, it's there in, you know, every time we have a social interaction. So Asiya, I just wanted to ask you that apart from, of course, award-winning art house films and, you know, documentaries, in your work with corporates or other organizations, would you also use like a popular mainstream film like Kabir Singh or something? Because I think the people there would know that much more than the films we are talking about here.
Right.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. So we don't always have a luxury to take a film festival everywhere we go. So often I do need to rely on films which everybody would have already seen. And to your example, Kabir Singh is definitely a film that, you know, almost 99% of the audience, you know, wherever I am, in whichever socioeconomic background, have seen. And of course, this film has been the subject of really heated debate, and I'm not a theorist, I'm not a film academic or critic, so I'm not going to go into that space of, you know, what I think about that film. But I do remember seeing shows and roundtable discussions where the director and the actor were getting a lot of you know, a lot of bashing, and they were getting really defensive, and it became really you know, quite uncomfortable. But as a person who uses mainstream film often in her work, what I am more interested in is that this film was a phenomenal success. And we can't deny the fact that people resonated with that film, right? So that, I mean, people are watching this film more than they've watched, you know, any other film, which perhaps in your opinion, in my opinion, would be, you know, way better, way more evolved films. So I think for me, the question was that what are the reasons for that? Why is it that people really love this film or are willing to engage with it? And there are people in my audience who've seen this film 3, 4, 5 times, right? So, and I want to say that I am hugely glad that a film like Kabir Singh got made. And that's why I'm not a snob with films, because I'm so glad it got made because of the quality of conversations I can have with people using Kabir Singh as a reference point. I'm even more glad that this film was also made in Telugu. I'm glad that there's an Arjun Reddy, because when I go to a more Telugu speaking audience, which may not have seen Kabir Singh, they've seen Arjun Reddy. And I hope the director makes this film in at least 20 more languages so that I can have those discussions everywhere. The interesting thing here is that when we have discussions using Kabir Singh as a starting point, we start discussing things like, why do women fall for men like Kabir Singh? What is in this whole, you know, this bad boy image that is just so attractive to women? what is this hold that violent men have on women, right? Why do we as a society admire selfish men and we look at selfishness in men as an admirable, as a superior quality? Why is it that we are stuck in this dynamic in even romance novels like Mills and Boon's virginal, sweet girl who a man takes? Even the word is, he took her. A man takes you. I mean, even all those intellectuals who read Ayn Rand and all, I'm sorry, even her books are filled with extremely, violent imageries of men. So why do we want a partner that fits this bad boy image? Is it this lure of forbidden love, exciting love? Is there, what the hell is it? And that's what we start evaluating. And I can't tell you how brilliant the conversations are, because girls start talking about how men love bomb them, stalk them, how women feel really happy about such things, because you are taught that romance is about male domination, right? And that's why you get so excited. You feel special. You feel protected. You want an abusive man to fall in love with you, because if you are attached to an abusive man, your hope is that you will be protected from that abuse, because now he'll abuse others. But because you belong to him, you have been taken by him, you will not be subjected. I mean, that's the mistake we make. And then we later realize that, of course, we will be subjected to much more of it. We will never be protected from it, right? But that's a realization that comes very late in life, right? So that, I mean, I can't forget one conversation that I had after, we started talking about Kabir Singh, where this girl tells me that, ma'am, my friend is in a relationship like this, where this guy is love bombing her, he's perpetually checking her phone, and everyone finds this really cute, ki kitna love karta hai, dekh tere ko, tere bina wo jee nahi sakta, that kind of thing. And she said, I can see this abuse, but how do I tell her? Because right now she's so in love with him that if I try having this conversation with her, she's going to think that I'm jealous of her, and she's a hotter looking girl and she's had a lot of male attention, which I haven't. So if I say anything against this guy, she is sure to think that because I don't get male attention, I'm jealous of her. So for half an hour, the entire group started strategizing on how to, they started helping her with vocabulary and strategies on how to have that conversation with her, with her friend. And they also told her that, excuse me, even your dynamic with your girlfriend is really unhealthy, because if you're so jealous with each other about, for male validation, that itself is it. So, she got a double kind of a feedback. And I mean, it was just such a powerful conversation. One of those conversations where I came out of the room, despite being the facilitator, with 10 takeaways and 10 ways of thinking, which I probably hadn't concentrated my, mind on before this discussion happened. So I'm not going to tell you what I actually think of Kabir Singh. That's irrelevant. But I want more movies like that so that I can have more discussions like that.
I think while we all think about a dreaded nightmare of a festival being organized on Toxic Masculinity Festival with all the different language variations of Kabir Singh, I just wanted to tell you we are running a little late on time, and we have some very, very exciting things lined up. So before we go into the next disruption, by spoken word disruption by Sudeep, I want all the panelists here to think of one answer. There's been a question by Udayan Philip, which has been sent to me by Altamash, where he said, could you recommend a film for a group of privileged schoolboys to help them recognize male privilege? And I'm sure the more different answers we have, because we have people from all sides of the spectrum, you can just think about your answer, we don't have to immediately start talking. And after that, I would like to generally talk about the larger role of the impetus of boys and men to, being a part of the change and being agents or allies of the movement, so to speak. So while we are all thinking of this, can I please invite Sudeep Pagedar again? And the second poem is about homophobia. Over to you, Sudeep.
Thank you, Satchit. It's good to be back. I've really been enjoying the conversation. It's not very often that I get to engage in such discussions, working as I do in the startup world, where everything is all about tech, and there's a lot that I feel the entrepreneurial world can benefit from by attending discussions such as these. Because a lot of these issues, they are prevalent in the world of startups as well. It's not just the corporate world, it's not just the corporate sector. And I'm really glad I could, in fact, I have invited a couple of others from my workspace to listen in on this, because I think it's very important they do. So thank you all for these insights. And as Satchit said, I do have a poem. This is a poem that is called Resurrection. You'll figure out why it's called Resurrection once I share it with you. But just some background to this poem. I generally don't give background to my poems, but this also comes from a true experience, a true story. Certain circumstances have been modified. That is the only creative liberty I have taken with it. But the rest of what you're about to hear is entirely true. So without further ado, here's Resurrection. Honorable Justice, thank you for letting me take the stand in order to take a stand. I come to you today, neither to defend nor to condemn, for isn't that your prerogative? I speak in the interrogative because I have learned the less I presume, the better. An assumption lacking knowledge is just self-fastened fetters. As I speak, I only ask that you carefully listen and reflect, as I have done, on the way I used to think, speak, act, and not even blink at what I later understood was something quite rotten that I've long since thrown out but never quite forgotten. I'm talking about my homophobia. At this point, you might ask why I hemmed and hawed to even broach the topic, especially when I know now that I was incredibly wrong. Well, it's shorter than the decade, which is just how long I was a flaming, flamboyant, fabulous homophobe. Looking back, I suppose it started in my school, where it was incredibly uncool for boys to be or behave as anything but boys, angry boys, toxic boys. Boys don't cry, boys don't ask why, they simply don't. Boys must be strong, boys whose hair can't be grown too long. And if it does, the boys will be mocked, will be talked about and locked in their rooms for asking about things that don't come with the conditions that masculinity brings, like, don't play with kitchen sets. Are you a silly girl? Do you wear frocks? Now shut up and go wear your football socks and cricket shoes. You have 2 minutes. You don't like sports? Well, that's just effeminate. Get those toy guns and fight with your friends. And if you hurt each other, there's no need to make amends. It's a guy thing. It's a dude thing. It's a man thing. Men fight. Men work. Men love, but never each other. I had a friend in school, I think he was gay. At least that's what I heard all the other guys say, with a vocabulary consisting of unspeakable words, mostly whispered behind his back, words renowned for their sheer lack of anything positive implied. Baila, chakka, sissy, ye good. Words that could take a smiling boy and wipe that smile right off his face. Words without a trace of compassion, a trait he was known for, but he was shown that he didn't deserve any. And though we were close for the first few years, all those words gave birth to my fears that I too might become like him and be called Sudeep Pagedar. For the longest time after that, I believed that being gay was a matter of decision, careful planning, intent, precision, and it baffled me, confused me. Why someone would ever choose such a disgusting thing? A man with a man? It's far from being natural or part of God's plan, and this so is how I justified my raging homophobia. If I had no context to understand another's choice, how and why would I speak in any other voice except for that of derision and vitriol and hate upon a phenomenon to which I just couldn't relate? I went to extremes and I preached against it all. If they don't stop being gay, let's just build a big wall and isolate them from the rest of the world. The normal world, you know, my world, our world, but not theirs. No way. They were aliens, immigrants, uncultured monsters who needed to be removed, sterilized. No, eliminated. Little did I know then that I was fated to have better company than I ever deserved. People with open minds who reserved their judgment for what actually was the problem. Idiots who thought and acted as I did. And these were smart folks. They were super well-read, people who never digested the bigotry they were fed in their own childhoods and who thought for themselves instead of becoming puppets on society's dark shelf. And they talked me through my self-imposed blindness and deafness and paralysis. They encouraged me to think and engage in analysis of my thoughts and my feelings, my prejudices and my fears. It took a whole decade, 10 incredibly long years, but I needed that time to process it all. And when I finally broke free, remember I told you about the man who was a boy who had always only tried to be a man to be the man? He was finally able to cry alone and with friends, and no matter how they identified. And not just cry, he laughed too, and as acceptance cut him, no, as acceptance cut me deep, that boy's homophobic avatar was mercifully put to sleep. The pain still lingers of the infected boy lanced by the cut that time made, but I'll always be grateful for the sharpness of the blade and honorable justice. This, then, was my statement, delivered, duly signed. I sincerely hope you won't mind as I don't mind the pain, if every time I need to, I'll come before you and tell this tale again. And this is probably the 5th time, Satchit, and I want to keep saying it because it's not easy for me to remember those times, but it's important that we do, because we are condemned to repeat the mistakes we forget, and I will not make those mistakes again. So I'm glad. Thank you for this opportunity to share this poem with you as well.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Sudeep, again for writing this commendable piece of poetry. And now, I'll reiterate, we are running a little late on time, but for that question that was asked, if the panel is open for, I think we can go one by one, or we can go whoever wants to speak. Not just about that one particular film where you think could be relevant for getting privileged children, boys to recognize their gender privilege, but also about the role of men and boys in general to become allies. Maybe Rashmi, you want to start?
I'm not sure if I have one favorite film, because I think right from something like, in the Western style, there's the Dead Poets Society or Good Will Hunting. But I think recently, I think it's also how you see a film. Like even in a film like Masan, I read a very interesting review which said it was beginning to say that it's okay for men to cry. Like what Sudeep just said. Your boys don't cry, but you can cry in front of a girl. It's okay. So, I think films where they are exploring even something like Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara and all, if you've got to see it from the right point of view, Dil Chahta Hai and all. There are documentaries like there's A Better Man, where this guy actually now is out of a relationship that went abusive. And he's, the dialogue that they have, now he meets the girl after 20 years and accepts that he was wrong. So I think I have a lot of favorites. I wouldn't say one. It's more how you see a film, which is trying to bring out the male bonding or the attitude towards a girl, towards a relationship, I would say.
Thank you. Maybe Devashish, you want to speak something since
there's
the film bumps? Yeah.
A very specific film from 2018. It's a film called Nightingale, and I call it the anti-Kill Bill. It at a very simplistic DNA level, it's a rape revenge story. But because it's a woman who made that film, and she's a very staunch feminist woman, and a wonderful filmmaker. She's managed to go back into a time in history when the country where she set the story was colonized. There was war, and in the middle of it all is this one girl who represents everything that was wrong with all these ideas of power structures, whether it's colonizing another country or war. In all of those things, the woman is collateral, and they're all games that men play with one another. So that film really sparkles when it tries to tell you that every man is born into a place of privilege and needs to question it.
Asiya, I know your answer is definitely not Kabir Singh, but
did he ask specifically about caste, how to talk about caste with privileged boys, or was it just about gender?
About gender.
Okay. Yeah, so I think Masan, I think Sairat, the Marathi, not the one that Karan Johar made, but the film that it was based on, that is excellent. In SamaBhav Film Festival, there's this lovely film called Turup. So see if you can get permission for that. And a movie that I got really impacted by is a film called Get Out. Which is really interesting. It's about this white American girl who's taking her African American boyfriend home for the weekend to meet her parents. And the parents seem like these really liberal, open-minded people. And I won't tell you more because it's a horror. So you must see. It's called Get Out, I think. It was very chilling. It even addresses things like how we exoticize a particular community, right? So blacks are exoticized for being hunky and sexy. And we do a similar thing with Muslims in India. I have a lot of men who tell me, oh, so you're Muslim. I like dating Muslim women. There's something very exotic about you guys, which is, I think, a very weird form of prejudice. It's not a compliment to say that, to exoticize a person. And we tend to treat Muslim women sometimes, even in film, as these exotic creatures who need to be protected from Muslim men. And I think that's another very vulgarized, form of thinking. So I think Get Out was an interesting film. We'll probably Netflix. I'm not sure if you can use it with really young children, and that's why I think I like working with the older lot, because I don't need to censor things so much. But you could explore, and I'd love to continue this conversation with you. So maybe you could drop a mail to Satchit or Altamash, and we could think together. I mean, since I'm also constantly thinking about things like that.
And probably Tara's turn to speak.
So I'm less familiar with film as the other panelists, so I'm just going to leave them to give all of the expertise. But I recently watched this song called Karabu from this Kannada film called Pogaru. Okay, and it's insane. Someone pointed it out on Facebook, and I went and watched it.
It's horrifying.
It's horrifying. Okay, so my point is I can give you a whole list of films, and pretty much, a lot of Bollywood, even the more mainstream Bollywood films from the 70s and 80s. And if you look at them from a critical lens, till such time as we're talking about this Karabu song, like all the way down, Karabu has a virginal, fair girl being, I hate the word Eve tease, but this is what they probably consider Eve tease, but she's sexually harassed all the way. She's going wherever she is, and there are these gangs of men pulling her hair. And this is what from what I understand, this is what the hero is doing as a courtship ritual. So to me, looking at a lot of these films from a critical lens, I don't know the positive examples, but looking at a lot of this from a critical lens is a really great way to open a conversation as well.
Just one last bit. When I mentioned about the byline being, if she can see it, can she be it? They've come up with a new line when they're dealing with masculinity at the Gina Davis, and this is actually with Salma Hayek's Husbands Foundation. They're doing a study saying if he can see it, will he be it? So, I'd like to ask that question for another conversation, that will he be it if he can see it? So I think there are lots of conversations. And as Asiya said, we would love to carry on this, but please carry on with the program. I know we're running late.
Yes, we are almost, we have gone beyond our stipulated time to end it.
Yeah.
But there is something very, very particularly exciting that we are launching today on this Dissemination Day, and that is an audio podcast. So I would like to really invite someone very, very special, and that person's name is Mr. Prateek Sharma. Prateek, can you quickly say hi?
Hi, hello everyone.
Yes. So now with that voice, I don't need to explain, but former radio presenter with nearly 23 years of broadcasting experience, senior journalist with the BBC, and they've recently founded Motor Mouth Podcasts. And from his profile, it reads very interesting, which is trying to do an observation of masculinity and its manifestations. I don't want to explain much. In fact, Prateek himself, along with Ashwin, if he's also joining us, will give us a glimpse into the teaser of the manifesto. It is brilliantly titled The New Manifesto, which has the word man inside. So over to you, Prateek.
Well, first of all, thank you very much to MAVA and HARISH ji and all the panelists who are here. It's been such a fabulous discussion. As Devashish mentioned a while ago that, he refers to himself as work in progress. I truly consider myself to be work in progress. For this program, for this podcast that we have created, I can't take credit for it at all. My co-host Ashwin, who unfortunately could not join us, it's a Monday, so he's busy with work right now. He got pulled into a meeting, but he sends his apologies to everyone. Ashwin came to me with the idea for this program. Being a subject matter expert, I think his insights and the level of understanding that he has about these subjects, about patriarchy, privilege, male privilege, about, the extent that homophobia can impact anyone at a psychological level, at a deep psychological level. I was familiar with these concepts. Probably my level of understanding was not as deep as his. So for me, creating this podcast has been a wonderful learning experience. What we sort of identified was that there is a lot of chatter, there is a lot of conversation that happens around patriarchy, the evils of patriarchy, toxic masculinity. A lot of times we are trying to convince women on how to deal with, let's say, a behavioral pattern coming from a man, which is toxic in nature. How many times have we actually tried to catch hold of a man and tell him, hey, do you see this? This is where probably you are going wrong. Nobody has told you that yet. There are very few organizations such as MAVA, that are working in this area. And we thought that it may be worth talking to these men. Now, we've interviewed a lot of people. Some of them are here as panelists today. We have spoken to Asiya. We have spoken to Sudeep as well. And what fabulous episodes they are. They will be releasing very soon. Our first episode is about masculinity and dating. Now, because we're in that digital age and dating as a concept has now actually come down to our mobile phones. Everything is happening on your mobile phone, and that gives you some sort of an anonymity as well as a veil of protection. You can, men especially in this context, find it very easy to say things to a woman that they would not dare say in front of them if they were physically present in front of them. We had a wonderful guest on that episode. Her name is Puruvi, and she's a clinical psychologist. She worked with an offline dating company which facilitated, these dates among members who were on that service. And the experiences that she has shared, which before we started recording the episode, we sort of anticipated that there would be a lot of behavioral patterns that we would talk about coming from men. While recording the episode, while having those conversations with her, we realized how deeply these ideas of patriarchy, as well as, toxic masculinity behavioral patterns, have been internalized by women also. And through that conversation, a lot of things became clear for us, which will help us in making much better programs in the future as well. Altamash, if you could play one excerpt from the show that I had shared earlier. This is a 3-minute clip that we have from the episode that we have released today. So here is the first episode of the new manifesto from Motormouth Podcasts. Welcome back to the new manifesto from Motormouth Podcasts. We are Prateek and Ashwin in conversation with Purvi Baraya. We are talking dating and masculinity.
So far, Purvi told us about the first round of interviews she conducted with prospective users of the offline dating company she used to work with. In subsequent rounds, Purvi noticed even stronger manifestations of patriarchy and masculinity in the men she interviewed.
So one of the questions in the second interview was that, so what do you plan to do after say you get married, or, you and your partner decide to live together? A lot of the men were very clear about the fact that their parents, the man's parents, would have to stay with them because that's just how it is. And then in the third interview, which we taken after a span of some days, the question was sort of like, okay, so what if your wife's parents decide to stay with you? Or what if you have to stay with your wife's parents? And the kind of vehement responses that we got to it from men who were supposedly open-minded and liberal and, all of that was very interesting, because immediately you can see that there is a difference mentally, which actually plays out very clearly in day-to-day life and day-to-day interactions.
And this is clearly a problem. In the same situation, men would expect the exact opposite from women.
So these were all examples of situations where men went wrong, massively. But there have been situations where the behavior was absolutely on point.
Because there is a certain conception of gender roles, etc., etc. So very often the man would offer to pay. Actually, one of our members, very sweet fellow, he would always offer to pay, but he would never insist on paying. Actually, he was okay with the other woman paying for him also. So it was a very nice thing of, oh, sure, if you want to pick up the check, that's fine, and I'll get the next one. Which is also a nice way of ensuring that you get a second date, right? It's a smart move.
But when it comes to footing the bill, this seems to be somewhat of a grey area. Some men who do believe in going Dutch have often experienced that they are expected to be the ones picking the check. And for such situations, Purvi says,
this, I think, is also important for maybe men to realize that every person is different. And because the dating space is such an unsure, unclear, sort of murky territory anyway that you're navigating through, there's no one formula works for everyone, right? So I would have men sometimes who would come back and say that, oh, what, she expected me to pay and how can she do that, etc., etc. Sure. I mean, you don't want that. That's totally fine. But I think what's also important to sort of remember is just like men have been socialized in patriarchy, so have women. If men have certain gender role expectations from men and women, then so do women, right? And for right or wrong, some of these socializations are very real and very strong, and they do exist. So I think what you should do in that instance is to have a conversation.
And we agree. Having a conversation is extremely important.
So yeah, that's one small excerpt from the first episode of the new manifesto. The podcast has released. The episode is available on all major podcasting platforms. Very soon it will be on our own platform as well. So please do check it out. Please do listen to the entire episode. Please do let us know what your thoughts are on that episode. And in case if there is a story that you think we need to cover, that we should cover in this podcast, please don't hesitate in reaching out. I will drop my contact details in the chat box. So, I mean, we would be happy to hear from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Running again very late with time. Just a couple of important announcements. Harish had mentioned that one of the answers for the kind of film that privileged boys could be made to watch to understand gender privilege is a film called Moonlight, and a film called Turup was also mentioned by Asiya, and the film Turup is available on YouTube. So Altamash, if you also want, you can just send the link of Turup and put it. And we are unfortunately we can't take all the questions that are being asked right now. But I would like to mention that you can just follow MAVA on the Facebook page or Instagram and you can pose the question there, or you can reach out to individuals who are on the panel, and we'd be more than happy to answer it. Just before going, I thought there was one particular I wanted, even though there's no time, I wanted to keep a little bit of a rapid fire reaction, because there was one particular comment that came where somebody said that please elaborate on this, कि एक औरत ही दूसरे औरत की सबसे बड़ी दुश्मन है. A woman is the biggest enemy that a woman can have, and how do we kind of fight with these kind of thinking, and so of course Tara is raring to go, and I want her to go first, but we'll keep it a bit of a rapid fire, and after that, if Harish says, we can officially end the evening tonight. So over to you, Tara.
I think this is a patriarchal notion. Okay, we have been set up to believe that men are in short supply, and we should all fight each other to get the attention of these men. Now, this is from an evolutionary psychology, but also from the evolution of patriarchy. This is what we've been led to believe, which is not true. Also, this whole idea that women have to constantly undercut each other is perhaps an older way of understanding gender relations, and a more evolved feminism that you're seeing online today. When you come to feminist internet, or when you come to it's all about women supporting women. If you look at that challenge accepted thing, which the black and white pictures that did the rounds a couple of weeks ago, it was again about calling out the solidarity that women feel. And I think this is a solidarity that we should encourage, because women are as indoctrinated into patriarchy as men are, because patriarchy is not a fight between the genders, it's a fight of ideologies. And women need to see different ways of being as much as other people do, as much as other genders do. So no, women are not each other's dushmans. We don't need to compete. In fact, this whole, our solidarity is exponential, and we need to, take everyone on the movement, each other and our male allies as well.
Thank you. Who's going next on the rapid fire? Anyone else?
Yeah, so very quickly, I really don't believe in men, women. I think there are people. So there are people who will backbite. There are people who will betray you. There are people who won't. Sometimes women will let you down. Sometimes a person of another gender will let you down. So I think just pitting women against women, we should cut it. So whenever anybody talks about, is she better looking or I would say, excuse me, I think they're both very intelligent and wonderful. So I think we have to consciously, when in social spaces, people try to do that kind of thing, try to pit one young girl against another, try to pit a housewife against a working woman. I think we have to just say, shut the fuck up, man. This is real nonsense.
Finally, I'm not the only one to use the F word on this conference. And probably...
This is not an educational institution. So I really behave when I'm in an educational institution.
Can I
I love it.
Yeah,
please, yes, Dave, please.
I'll just simplify this for everyone. Anything that smells of an oversimplification or a broad brush stroke, trash it.
Yeah, totally.
All these things are too complex.
Yeah.
Let's not have simplistic discussions anymore. We are just furthering the binaries that already exist.
That's like this joke that I'd heard, which said that all generalizations in this world are bad, including this one. Rashmi, you'd like to say something about this, or should we go to our last bit then?
Yeah, no, I think I completely agree that it's got to be a dialogue with everyone. And I don't think there is now actually a lot more of dialogue happening. Yes, there used to be that SamaBhav serials. And I was actually, talking to someone who said, who educates girls, about 50,000 girls. And she said she decided what's her biggest competition. And without naming who's making these serials, she said, it's that person who's making all these SamaBhav serials. So I think, as Devashish says, let's not simplify, and let's get on with it, and let's have dialogues. There's no exclusions and no competition.
Thanks a lot. And getting on with it being the name of the game, we are very proud to say that we are going to be continuing this discourse online in whatever limitations we are faced with. We are going, ideally, as I said, we should have been in an auditorium having a discussion and changing lives. But MAVA's next event online, as Altamash has put the slide on, is called Manush, Unboxing Gender and Masculinity. It's a fresh title, and we are building a lot of exciting interactions under this theme of unboxing gender and masculinity. The first session online will be on Friday, 21st August 2020 at 5 p.m. It's what is it, who's the filmmaker, what is the discussion, who's on the panel. For that, just keep watching this space, as the saying goes. You can visit us at mavaindia.org, Facebook, Insta, YouTube, Twitter, all the handles are mentioned here. So with that being it, I know I had mentioned earlier that there are going to be 3 poems, but we really don't have time, but I'm going to invite Sudeep one more time to do the last poem, because I think the last poem is very, very compelling, because they're kind of increasing in intensity. The first being on toxic masculinity, the second being homophobia, and the third being transphobia, which is something that homophobia as a term is still now something that most people are aware of, but transphobia is something that we all probably need to know a little more about. So over to you, Sudeep, to end this amazing interaction.
This poem, when I start, and it's genuinely a work in progress, right? I mean, this is something that I've been writing up until a few hours ago, and I've started writing this some months ago. It's been in my mind for over a year now, and I think that's how we evolve, right? I mean, we put out bits and pieces of ourselves from time to time, and those bits and pieces are modified by the experiences we have, they're shaped by the people we meet, experiences such as this one, such as this. There's a lot of food for thought that I've received here, and for in all likelihood, it's going to manifest as a new poem that you will probably hear at MAVA's next online meet. This poem was going to be titled Crossed, but it would have lost its effectiveness because my words aren't just the sum of my own experiences. Instead, here, their meaning is multiplied and added to by the voices of those whose names are dead, but whose pride has never felt so alive. But before I tell you about what I've learned in more recent times, I'm already time machining to the first time I saw a man, a woman, a man. I couldn't understand what I was looking at. My world before then was neatly divided into one gender for me and one gender for you. But this was confusing, you see. My mind was refusing, like society at the time, to recognize that identity could be fluid or moving, in flux or divergent from sex, that it was all hush-hush, something to be whispered, something to be looked at out of the corner of one's eye. We'll never understand this, so why should we even try? And through the years, I subscribed to just that. In my world of fixed genders, wearing my cis-hetero hat, I grew up being scared of anything I could not understand. And of the many things I never really got, transgender identity, I definitely did not feel comfortable around such people. The polite term was eunuch, but and eunuchs still, well, yuck, well, aren't they beggars? They're so damn persistent. They're always like in your face, like they want to give you what they have. And if what they are is akin to an illness, that surely can't be good for one's health and wellness. So they're best avoided. It's always better to be sure of whether it is a he or a she, but never a they, because that was a term which I hadn't come to terms with yet. And if I'm being honest, gender identities are still something I'm learning about, dimensions and aspects. And with respect to that, I'll say I'm no longer uncomfortable by saying the word transgender or engaging with the community, because the world starts by changing itself, and that, I have learned, is always a work in progress. Which fits this poem better, no? Now that I'm free from those fetters that kept me in the dark, away from the spark of knowledge, of acceptance, of courage, and the confidence to be able to engage with reason, not rage, when I speak to someone who, like me, was biased, bigoted, and who hasn't yet pivoted to a more understanding stance. And I won't leave it chance. I'll talk to them like I'm talking to you right now. And I'll be able to say, this is the way I see things now. And if that makes you uncomfortable, let's talk gender. Or in other words, hashtag sorry, not sorry. And on that note, Satchit.
Thank you. And again, I'm really glad that in spite of the delays in time, we've managed to cover all the important events that we have spoken about. Okay, I got a fresh message. What about group pick? Can we have?
So
Yes.
if I can come in.
Sure.
Yeah. So I think I'll just take a screenshot. People who have turned off the camera, if they're comfortable. If not, that's okay. If they're comfortable, please do turn on your camera. We'll take a screenshot of it, and so that we can probably post it on our Facebook and other pages. Okay, so I'm going to do we're going to smile, or Satchit, are you going to tell us what?
Tell us when, so that we smile at that.
Okay,
who's operating the camera? I think you should be doing it.
Okay. So everybody say cheese. Is that what we're saying? Is there anything else? Some fancy word? Okay, guys.
Say diversity, like gender diversity, because it'll give us the same thing as cheese. Yeah.
Because that's the start. That's something which will trigger off further things. I'm sure people who have talked and listened, and now when they watch this later on, on our channel, they will get fresh ideas and insights, and the conversation chain will continue. So I think very interesting that we were able to generate, and we were able to have this conversation going. Thank you so much, Satchit, for taking the lead, and all the panelists were fabulous. We have been all working, with hand in hand on so many places, but it's very nice that each one is a distinguished person having potential to share, contribute, and make the conversation more enriching. So I find that is something very fascinating. There are ways in which we come together at times, and at the same time, we are able to look at our professional, expertise and put it humbly before others. And I think that is very amazing, So let this be at the start of our conversations, and we are really excited that in the time of corona, we are not getting depressed with the lack of face-to-face interactions, but there is some alternative that we are offering. So I hope these conversations continue, and all those people in the chat box, and they will write to us if they are attending first time, because we would like that this, if it has to spread in whatever small way each one can contribute, we would really appeal that they join our mission, and in whatever small way they can contribute. Asiya mentioned about non-financial, and I think even financial, drops in the ocean can really make a lot of difference. So it's each one can do their bit. So in whichever organization people are working, if they would like, say, one small screening of a film that we showcased at SamaBhav, we would be more than happy. So there should be engaging conversations further to this. So I'm really glad that we were able to, and I appeal and I hope that many people will join. So that's it. Thanks a lot for the team MAVA.
Thank you everyone. Bye-bye.